Russia will conduct a limited nuclear strike on Germany and the United Kingdom within 2 years.
Wow.
And that isn't a line from some dystopian novel.
Not at all.
That is a direct, terrifying ultimatum issued just days ago by Sergei Karaganov.
The advisor to Vladimir Putin, the man who effectively, writes the Kremlin's foreign policy playbook.
And he says the goal is to bring Europe to its senses.
And if we don't stop sacrificing for Ukraine, Russia will, and this is a direct quote, punish them harshly.
It is Saturday, January 24, 2026. The world feels like it's holding its breath. And if you stand with Ukraine and Europe, you need to stay ahead of these threats. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Aria in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, this terrifying ultimatum that just came out of Moscow.
It's a huge docket today. We aren't just looking at threats, we're looking at a fundamental shift in nuclear doctrine that legally, it traps NATO.
Yeah.
We're going to break down Operation Spiderweb, that daring Ukrainian covert op. The one with the truckers and drones that just humiliated the Russian Air Force.
And we have to talk about the Shadow Fleet. Everyone knows about the oil tankers, but we've got new intelligence on what those ships are really doing, loitering over undersea cables in the Baltic.
It is not about oil.
No, it's about an internet kill switch.
Plus, the surreal diplomatic crisis over Greenland. It sounds like a distraction. But this spat between President Trump and Denmark is threatening to fracture NATO unity right when things are, hitting a fever pitch.
And if that wasn't enough, we have reports from just 4 days ago that Russian strikes have cut power to Chernobyl's safety systems. Again.
It is an incredibly dangerous time, so let's not waste a second.
Let's dive in. We have to start with this Karaganov article, the one from January 16th. I've read a lot of Russian saber rattling over the years, usually from Medvedev, and you kind of learn to tune it out.
Right.
But Karaganov, this feels different. For the listeners who don't track the Kremlin org chart, why does this guy's word carry so much weight?
Okay, so you have to understand the ecosystem in Moscow. Sergei Karaganov isn't some TV pundit shouting for ratings.
Yeah.
He's the honorary chairman of the Council on Foreign and Defense Policy. They call him the Patriarch of Realism. When he writes, he isn't guessing. He's usually floating a trial balloon for Putin's next major policy shift. He's the intellectual architect.
So when he speaks, it's basically the trailer for the movie the Kremlin is about to release.
That's a good way to put it. And his argument in this article is chillingly specific. He claims the West has lost its fear of nuclear war.
He calls it strategic parasitism.
Strategic parasitism. I mean, what a loaded phrase.
It is.
It's his way of saying that Western nations think they can fight a proxy war against Russia forever without ever getting burned. He argues this lack of fear is dangerous for Russia, and to restore deterrence, they have to lower the threshold for using nuclear weapons.
And he explicitly mentions hitting Germany and the UK.
To sober up the West. That's his phrase.
Sober up. It's such a mobster way of putting it. The implication is they can launch a quote-unquote limited strike, maybe hit a military base in Germany, a logistics hub in Britain.
And they're betting the U.S. won't trade New York for Hamburg.
That's the whole escalate to de-escalate theory, right? Break their will with one horrific act so they back down.
Exactly. But he's not the only one. We have to talk about Dmitry Medvedev.
Okay.
Usually he's the bad cop, but his recent comments to President Trump about Tomahawk missiles were incredibly technical.
Yeah, I saw that. He said if the U.S. supplies Tomahawks to Ukraine, it will end badly for everyone. But he made a specific point about radar signatures, didn't he?
He did. He stated that it is impossible to distinguish a nuclear Tomahawk from a conventional one in flight, which, technically is true from a radar cross-section perspective.
Right, until it detonates, you don't know if it's a high-explosive warhead or a W-80 nuke.
Precisely. But Medvedev is weaponizing that ambiguity. He's drawing a new red line. If we see a Tomahawk, our doctrine compels us to assume it's nuclear and launch a counterstrike.
He's removing the space for hesitation.
And this isn't just talk. This all ties back to the boring paperwork that actually starts wars. The legal framework changes from late 2024.
That was the pivotal moment, November 2024.
Putin signed the new nuclear doctrine. The old rule was simple. Russia uses nukes only if the very existence of the state is in jeopardy. That's a high bar.
Tanks rolling into Moscow kind of bar.
Right, the new rule.
They can use them for a critical threat to sovereignty or territorial integrity.
Sovereignty is a much, much looser term.
Oh yeah, losing a battle or even crippling sanctions. They could spin that as a threat to sovereignty if they get desperate enough.
But here's the kicker, the real trap, the joint attack clause.
Okay, this is the part that's truly terrifying.
The new doctrine states that aggression by a non-nuclear state, so Ukraine, that is supported by a nuclear state,
Like the US, UK, or
is
Israel.
not considered a joint attack on Russia.
So legally, in their eyes, a Ukrainian drone strike on a Russian airbase is now the same as the Pentagon launching a missile at the Kremlin.
That is the legal framework they have built. They have erased the distinction between Kyiv and Washington.
And you have to remember, the New START treaty, the last major arms control agreement, that expires next month.
February 2026.
And President Trump's position is basically, if it expires, it expires. Russia has blocked inspections. We are flying blind.
We are entering what experts are calling the third nuclear era. No guardrails, no inspections, and a doctrine that allows for first strikes based on these joint attacks. It's the most dangerous moment since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
It really feels like they are looking for an excuse.
Yeah.
But you have to ask, why now? Why is the rhetoric hitting this fever pitch in January 2026?
Because they're hurting. They're bleeding. And that brings us to the humiliation they suffered last summer.
Operation Spiderweb.
Yes.
This is one of those stories that historians are going to write books about. Let's take everyone back to June 1st, 2025. This wasn't a standard missile strike. This was something else.
It was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare by the SBU, Ukraine's security service. We call it Spiderweb because they used the Russian logistics network against itself.
They realized they couldn't just fly drones 1,000 kilometers through air defenses.
So they smuggled them.
Eric.
The SBU smuggled disassembled long-range drones into Russia. They used unsuspecting civilian truckers, commercial supply chains, to move these crates deep into the country.
Sneaking the weapon inside the castle walls using the enemy's own roads. Incredible.
Exactly. Once the components were deep inside, SBU operatives assembled them near the targets. And the targets were the crown jewels at Murmansk, Ryazan, and Irkutsk.
The bases for the strategic aviation fleet. The nuclear triad.
Yes. They hit the Tu-160 White Swans and the Tu-95 Bears. These are massive supersonic strategic bombers. Russia has a very, very limited number of Tu-160s, and they can't easily build new ones.
Ukraine claimed 41 aircraft hit. I remember Western intel later confirmed at least 10 destroyed and 20 damaged.
That's a generational blow. You don't just replace a Tu-160.
And the strategic fallout was immediate.
It forced Russia to scramble the surviving fleet all the way to the Far East, essentially hiding them near the Chinese border.
Which means every time they want to launch a missile at Ukraine, those bombers have to fly thousands of extra kilometers.
Exactly. It adds hours of flight time, burns tons of fuel, puts massive wear and tear on 40-year-old airframes. It degraded their ability to launch conventional strikes. It proved nowhere in Russia is safe.
And that humiliation is why Karaganov and Medvedev are screaming about red lines now.
They realize they can't defend their own airspace against a creative, determined Ukraine.
So on the battlefield, Ukraine is punching way above its weight. But Russia isn't just fighting with tanks. They've moved the war into the shadows, right into Europe itself.
This is the invisible front, the hybrid war. While we focus on the front line, Russia has launched a sub-threshold war on NATO soil. Since 2024, sabotage incidents in Europe have, increased fourfold?
We're talking about those accidental fires at warehouses, the train derailment.
Which turn out to be not so accidental.
Yeah.
But it's getting more brazen. Just late last year, late 2025, we saw unidentified drones disrupting air traffic at Liège Airport in Belgium and at Klein-Brogel Air Base.
Liège is huge. That's a critical logistics hub for NATO aid moving east.
Exactly. You shut down that airport even for a few hours, you disrupt the flow of artillery shells to the Donbass. It's effective, low cost, and deniable.
And then there's the water, the shadow fleet. We always talk about these rusty tankers dodging oil sanctions, but the new intel, it says they're doing something much nastier in the Baltic.
Right. These are aging merchant vessels, officially moving oil, but intelligence shows they are just loitering over critical undersea fiber optic cables.
They're mapping them.
They are mapping them. These ships drop what look like fishing nets, but they're deploying hydrographic sensors, submersible drones. They're identifying the weak points.
The threat is implicit. We can cut your internet, crash your banks, and sever NATO comms without ever firing a shot.
It's a stranglehold on European digital resilience. And because it can look like a clumsy accident with a rusty anchor, it's hard to invoke Article 5.
That's the beauty of the gray zone for them. It stays just below the threshold of open war.
Meanwhile, they're using AI to flood French and German elections with disinformation, trying to fracture the political will Europe needs.
Which is why we all have to be smarter than the bots. But let's shift back to the kinetic war, the meat grinder. It's January 2026. What does the front line look like right now?
It is a paradox, a mix of World War I, trench warfare, and high-tech horror. In 2025, Russia captured about 5,600 square kilometers. Sounds like a lot, but they paid for every single meter with staggering casualties.
We've seen the Mad Max tactics, soldiers on dirt bikes.
Yes, because armored personnel carriers are death traps. With all the Ukrainian drones, they're using motorcycles, ATVs, buggies. They just speed to the trench line, dump the infantry, and hope some survive the FPV swarms.
But while the transport is low-tech, the heavy weapons are evolving. Tell me about the Malvina M.
This is a nasty piece of hardware. It's a Russian unmanned ground vehicle, a robot tank, but it's equipped with thermobaric artillery.
Thermobaric, that's the fuel-air explosive.
Right. It disperses a cloud of fuel and then ignites it. It sucks the oxygen out of the air to create this massive high-temperature pressure wave.
So if you're in a trench or a bunker,
the pressure wave gets you, even if the shrapnel doesn't. It ruptures lungs, internal organs. It is devastating against dug-in defenders. And the Malvina M can hide 6 kilometers back, roll out, fire, and retreat before drones can find it. It's a huge problem.
And on the command side, you mentioned they're using AI generals.
The SOD system, the Russian officer corps, has been decimated. So many competent junior officers are gone. So they are relying on an AI to issue battle orders.
A computer algorithm telling a mobilized soldier where to advance and die.
Essentially, it creates this rigid, algorithmic style of warfare. It lacks human intuition, but it's relentless. An AI doesn't feel pity, and it won't hesitate to order a meat wave if the math says it yields a 5% gain. It's attrition managed by a calculator.
And speaking of attrition, they're going after the energy grid again, but they've escalated from hitting transformers to something much, much scarier.
Nuclear blackmail via energy. Just 4 days ago, January 20th, Russian strikes cut power to the electrical substations that support the Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
Chernobyl. The name alone makes you shudder.
And it should. A nuclear plant needs external power for its cooling systems. Grid goes down, you're on diesel backup generators.
And if those fail?
You're looking at a meltdown. The IAEA director, Rafael Grossi, reports military activity at all 5 Ukrainian nuclear sites. They aren't just trying to freeze civilians anymore. They are weaponizing the risk of a nuclear accident.
Holding a radioactive gun to the head of the entire continent. So with all this going on, you'd hope the diplomats are finding a way out. But the talks in Miami and Davos, total bust, right?
A bust is putting it mildly.
Eh?
The talks hit an absolute impasse.
What's the holdup?
The demands are completely irreconcilable. Russia is demanding the recognition of Novorossiya.
Which is territory they don't even fully control.
Exactly, and total demilitarization. Foreign Minister Lavrov said plainly that a ceasefire would only allow Ukraine to rearm and attack Russia. So it's a non-starter.
So diplomacy is deadlocked. And meanwhile, NATO, the alliance that's supposed to be the shield, is having a family feud over Greenland.
It sounds absurd, doesn't it? But this is critical. President Trump has renewed his interest in buying Greenland. Denmark, obviously, said no.
This feels like reality TV, not geopolitics. Why does this matter right now?
Because of the GI-UK gap, Greenland, Iceland, UK. That is the naval choke point for Russian subs entering the Atlantic. Controlling Greenland is about controlling the North Atlantic and the Arctic.
Plus the rare earth minerals.
Vital for the tech war against China. But the diplomatic fallout is disastrous. On January 17th, there were protests in Nuuk. Danish warships went on alert. We have 2 key NATO allies staring each other down over Arctic real estate while Ukraine is burning.
And you just know the Kremlin is loving this.
They're watching with glee. It distracts the US, it alienates an ally, and it fractures the unity we need to confront this Karaganov threat. It's the perfect storm.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. We have a lower nuclear threshold in Russian law. We have New START expiring in weeks. We have robot tanks and AI commanders on the front line. We have Chernobyl on backup generators. And our own alliance is bickering over an island.
That is the situation. The doomsday clock is at 89 seconds to midnight. The closest it has ever been.
So what does this all mean for the listener who wants to see Ukraine win and Europe stay safe?
It means the margin for error is gone. The experts say Russia is trying to sober up the West with fear. using these threats to bully us into abandoning Ukraine.
The psychological game.
Right. But when you introduce AI making battlefield decisions and nuclear power plants losing power, the question isn't just about political red lines anymore, it's about control.
We might be sliding into something we can't stop.
Exactly. The frightening thought is, can we stop a slide into World War III that might have already begun without us realizing it? We might look back at January 2026 as the moment the slide became irreversible.
That is a heavy thought to leave us with, but that is why we do this, to look reality in the face so we're not caught sleeping. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.